Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. For those who don't know me, my name is Sharon Austin, and today we're going to talk about with Colleen Bodwin and with Dr. Denault about what it takes to teach the distance formula. It's not specific to the distance formula, it's just meant to be used as an oversight of the overall problems of making content accessible. Okay, so a very generic case, but the distance formula is a really great starting point. Here's a video.
Hey everybody, this is Paul. Today I'm going to be showing you how to use the distance formula. So the distance formula tells us the distance between 2 points on an XY plane. So let's say
if we stop right there, already the blind person can't see an XY plane, right? Already, right off the bat. And this video had a lot of very great reviews to it. They said this was the first time that somebody explained the distance formula to them, that they could understand it, it made sense. So high kudos to the professor. But if you take a look at how he described what was going on, here he's talking about looking at points 1 and 2, and he's saying, look at this line I've drawn on the board, none of which is available to a blind student, right? It just isn't. So we try to follow the rules and do all the right things, and we look to guidelines as to what it takes to make content accessible. And just by saying that word, you're already running into a pile of problems, because what do you mean by accessible? Are you only talking about students with disabilities, or are you talking about the bigger umbrella version of accessibility, meaning does your student have money to get to your class? Is your classroom set up in a way that can accommodate wheelchairs, that sort of thing? So the lawsuit says make accessible. Pretty darn big thing to worry about. And also it says all web pages. Now, I think this will probably blow your mind, as it blew my mind when I kind of investigated the definition of a web page. Bottom line, it says a web page is anything that can grab a resource on the internet. But if you look closely at what the definition of a resource is, it doesn't have to be web stuff. And in fact, by that very extrapolation, my dog at home with her microchip is considered a web resource. I'm not kidding. That's how broad reaching this definition is. So, and be aware, there's a lot of people who have problems with it, but still, this definition from 1999 is still in effect. There's still groups arguing about whether it should be in effect as of last month, but we can't do anything about it because the lawsuit says all web pages, all intranets, all web content, and web content is a kind of a resource. So it doesn't matter what I think. I actually disagree with this definition, but it doesn't matter. We have to try, and it's pretty big and pretty encompassing. But it also, in a weird way, is kind of freeing. Okay, so if my dog can be a web resource, so can things like Lego building blocks with little chips in them that would allow a student to feel what the distance formula looks like via the triangles, okay? So that can actually be satisfaction to a requirement if we start including Braille, things you can touch and feel, things you can hear, the other modes of making things accessible, all right? Because sometimes you just can't make documents accessible in a timely manner. And sometimes it's just plain not possible, period. This is complicated by the fact of you have to know what technology you're using. Okay, so right now, with the latest screen reader survey done by an organization that studies this thing, the most popular one on record right now is called NVDA. It's a free screen reader, and I have it. But the problem is you have to understand and know that the screen reader works best with a certain operating system and works best with a certain browser. Most people don't know that. So if you just send people go forth and multiply, with this technology, and they're using Chrome instead of Firefox, or they're using Mac instead of Windows, what works for one person won't work for another. So you've got to have that kind of understanding, and it's actually a matrix. It gets even uglier and worse than that. Okay, because you not only do you have to have the right browser and you have to have the right operating system, you have to have the right versions of them. It's a permutation of what works. Okay, so and the settings, all right, just take note of this. If I write 1 + 1 = 2 and you're using NVDA, that most popular screen reader in use right now, in default settings, what you actually get 112 as read out. All right, so there's a lot of screen readers that you have to get the settings just right. Now, we use an automated accessibility checker, okay? And this automated accessibility checker is saying that this is golden, right? We've done all the right things with the machine to make it accessible. Well, let's see what happens in real life.
Desktop 1 window.
Sorry.
Sharon Austin math type. Sostin _ accessibility.
I'm looking for volume, people. Sorry. Here I am trying to get through that screen reader. I'm trying to make it find
accessibility, math type, test equation 1 item options, link, value https://ut.blackboard.com/ hide details, link, value https, test equation 1 item options, link, Sharon Austin math, edit, desktop 1 window, edit item, Sostin _ accessibility.
I'm still trying to get to the equation.
Content editor. Press Alt F10 for toolbar.
Imagine what a blind student's doing. Or one with low vision, by the way. All right, let's stop there. That's painful. Oh, it ended. Okay, exact same equation. Exact same setup. Our automated checker is also saying exactly the same thing. I'm using a different browser. All right.
Pause. Sharon Austin math type. At test equation 1 item options. Test tan theta equals plus or minus fraction numerator square root of 1 minus cos squared theta end root over denominator cos theta end fraction. Finish recording.
Okay, so you know, everybody teaches, everybody's got a million things going on. You're push. You know, check a box. You know, we've checked our boxes, a little light turns green, but the bottom line is the students still can't do their homework, right? If we don't know enough and take time enough to understand which browsers go with which screen readers, which versions, which operating systems, I mean, we've effectively patted ourselves on the back after an awful lot of grief of doing this, by the way. Giving ourselves a false sense of security about what accessibility means and thinking we've done our job. The other problem with all automated checkers, not just this one, but they're all prejudiced for blind people. They're not very good at finding the sorts of things that are good for people with low vision. They're horrible for things that create problems for students with mobility issues, don't have the use of their hands. All right, that's almost not registered, period. All right. I'm so sorry, I gotta just blow through this. I think, okay. What settings? So we saw that the browser makes a difference, but how many people actually go into the settings of the technology they've installed to make it accessible and pay attention to the settings? All right, here we see that you can have a setting math type, which I love math type. You can have a setting for blindness, for low vision, and learning disabilities, all right? But people don't take the time. They just care about clicking the little green box.
We don't even know.
I know you don't. I know you don't. I know you don't. I know you don't. All this takes an enormous amount of time to find out, an enormous amount of time to train, does it not? Does it not? I mean, and to even be aware that there's a problem, it's an issue, right? But it needs to be done. Here's also another problem. Okay. So you've done your part, you've done your homework, you've been through all the training, and you know which setting to use, you know, for blindness versus low vision. The user of the screen reader also has different modes that they choose, or that the screen readers will go into. Some screen readers, when they see a form, will automatically start doing different things and, to the thing. Some screeners, there's something called rude mode. I forget which screen reader uses it, but it tells you everything. And sometimes you just don't want to hear everything. You just want to get to the math, right? So that might change. What works for you might not work for the student if they have it set on a certain mode. But there's a gazillion screen readers out there in assistive technology, right? So all these assistive technologies have modes that have to interact with the settings, that have to interact with the operating system, that have to interact with the browser, that have to interact with the version of the software you're using, and by the way, also has to interact with whatever else is going on in the student's computer or yours, because they don't play nicely together sometimes, all right? Assistive technology sometimes fails when you've got other stuff running on in the background. Okay, another thing about checking boxes. You've checked the box, you've done a PDF, you've checked the box, and everything's all green and happy, and your file is accessible, but that's great if you're a consumer. That doesn't mean it's great if you're a student trying to be a producer of information. All right, so if your PDF is just like magically and totally accessible, which I've not yet seen one totally perfect, unless it was something really stupidly simple. All right, that doesn't mean the student can contribute towards your work, or learn. I mean, how is a student supposed to learn unless they do the work, right? How can they learn unless they're doing the work? They need actually a whole different environment to produce as well as consume. Now, the sighted student with no disabilities doesn't need all that, but your student with disabilities actually has to learn double the load, in addition to the load of learning how the assistive technology works. So the student with disabilities has to learn two environments, not one. One, to be a consumer of what you teach, and second, to be a producer of what they need to do for your class. All right? One innovative way, I just have to say this, one innovative way a teacher of blind students for math was teaching fractions was to divide pizza up into fractions, literally. And yes, that counts. That counts. I told you, sometimes you just got to think out of the box. But it made sense to them when they said, yeah, you get half the pizza, or a fourth of the pizza, or eighth of the pizza. And they learned their fractions real quick. Okay, other considerations. So really, there's, to be honest, not only is the accessibility measurement world kind of prejudiced towards making files accessible to blind people, to screen readers. It kind of goes aside for those with low vision or mobility problems. It also really depends heavily that you put it in text form, because that's how, in this day and age, modern screen readers, affordable screen readers work. Okay, and affordability is a big, huge thing for your students and for the university, of course. So that means text, but sometimes it's for students with disabilities. You've got other ways of doing things. So this text is a problem for many minority students, period. It's a problem for students with dyslexia. It's a problem for students who don't have good eyesight. I personally, when I was volunteering in Georgia with one student, this kid was held back many, many years until somebody decided to check his eyesight and realized he couldn't see the blackboard because he didn't have glasses. I mean, for the sake of a simple technology such as that, cultural inequities figure largely in education. I mean, very largely. There's a privilege here, and that kid and smarter kids at $10 a pop. They showed the scores. And this kid is not my personal experience, but I've had the personal experience of having that happen to a kid in the classroom and seeing what a difference it made just to give him a pair of glasses. All right, but this guy. Okay, so teaching math without words, this is video.
In school, the way of conveying ideas is through words. A teacher walks up to the board, writes words, says words. Students receive books with words and are expected to respond to questions with words.
Okay, let's stop there. You got the point. So just real quickly, this teacher found a way to teach a quadratic formula through vision, through these little building blocks alone. Okay, and if you want, I'll go and find that in the video so you can see it. But there's 2 points to this. One, by using visual elements instead of words, apparently when they tested for the understanding of the concept in class, it just shot up. It just way shot up. The other point is, I'm not a mathematician. I don't get why that teaches the quadratic formula. I don't get it. The teachers are so important. Accessibility is not just checking a box, installing the technology and letting it fly. Your expertise matters more than anything, okay? I can't teach the quadratic formula, even though I've got an art degree among others, right? I know I can tell you, why I think that's actually not an accurate representation of x squared versus x. I want the x squared to be bigger in relation to the blocks. But I don't have the basic principles in me to be able to teach a child why that is. Yet when the math teacher just got up there and did this with his knowledge, scores went out the roof. They improved just dramatically. It takes two things. It takes the technology, but it fails without the teacher and their knowledge. I can't say that strongly enough. What are we responsible for? Okay. Not responsible for perfection because it doesn't exist. It just doesn't. We are expected for an honest effort. Okay, and I've seen nothing but teachers try. They have tried without having any accessibility knowledge whatsoever. One of the math teachers, when she was teaching a blind student, wrote the graphs in his hand. Same thing. I could have written graphs in a person's hand all day long, but because I don't know math, they would have been garbage, right? It takes the teacher's knowledge. So, there's a lot of wisdom. We have not yet found a digital tool that replaces human knowledge. That's from highered.com. When you're starting with technology, you're doing it wrong. The first resource is the teacher. It's you guys and what's in your head. You can teach the quadratic equation or chemistry or whatever. Then why do we even care? If you watch this video, you will hear the horrific prejudice taken against people with disabilities. This person's mother was denied a teaching job because she was short and couldn't reach the blackboard, the technology of the day. I'm talking, the chalk and talk. That was the technology of the day. She was not able to get a job because they told her she couldn't handle the technology. If you listen to this video, there's all kinds of prejudice that are happening, even to this day. And I, for one, I am super glad that there are lawsuits going on because it seems to be the only thing that moves the needle and breaks through and makes work accessible. I will listen to that on your own. But here's the thing, we can't do it all. We want to try, so how do we try? We try to do this by doing things smarter, not harder. We have a plan. In that plan, and it's called the Equally Effective Alternative Access Plan, we say, okay, if we can't give you accessible material, we will give you something of equal opportunity to learn about the content. It doesn't mean the same stuff. It just means we'll give you something else from which you can learn the content. Where the lawsuit comes in is I document that. Okay, I document what that's about. Let's see, where am I? Oh, okay, so it's the next one. Okay. You focus on the opportunity. I'm here to help you with the technology. All right, there's a lot of resources for the technology. I document efforts that you guys are taking with the technology, and we start to break it down. So here's an example. I'm just using this video as an example because it describes a teacher teaching geometry to a blind person. And what she does, that's the JAWS. Okay, so what that is, that's a PDF of her geometry test. Okay, and she'll play you what it sounds like to the student.
The Nemeth code on it, and now they're going to
Let me stop there. The Nemeth code is scientific Braille. So that's a skill set that the students have to understand in order to participate here, which adds time and training, right? But school's supposed to fund you for that.
Output all this information in Excel. So
okay, again, so already two technologies in general, right? The PDF and Excel. The student as a consumer needs to understand what the teacher has, but already the teacher expects that student is going to be able to draw graphs with Excel. All right, two technologies, not including the screen reader.
The way my students get their work. So the document is opened. It's a scanned image.
Blank.
And JAWS or
Blank.
other talking software will just say blank. It cannot recognize anything in this document. So, of course, a paraeducator.
Okay, so you heard enough. You heard that the screen reader was only given blank, blank, blank. What good is that? You know, student's not going to get that, right? Let me see if I can quickly fast. What she does next is she puts the document into a Word format. I believe that's Word now. All right. Now, this is not screen reader ready. You know, if it's not accessible in the PDF, when you export it, it won't suddenly magically become accessible. But she's got method to her madness, and this is something Ethan has touched upon, with LaTeX, and he doesn't realize it yet. Okay. Okay, so she.
Google Docs, National Firefox, tab,
So
transformation,
the first
test
thing that a person is going to see if you're visual is you think, well, that didn't do any good. You just have an image in an image. You actually do not. So what I want you to do is down arrow.
Blank. Name colon.
And there it is. So what Google Docs actually does is it takes that image or scanned image
Name colon.
and it turns it into text.
Okay, and I wanted to put that in. So normally we're told to OCR our PDFs, and when we try and get student help, they don't have Adobe Acrobat Pro. This is what I've been doing with students who don't have the license for Adobe Acrobat Pro. I say, put it in Google Docs, export it to Word, and that actually OCRs the document. That's what she did here, okay? So why she OCR'd it is that eventually she just took out the images of the graphs. All right, she just took out the images because the screen reader can't read them. And all she did was leave the instructions, and this is what you were making allusions to, you know, when you remove the code for the LaTeX, you know. So basically stripping away all the stuff that doesn't work and just plain putting it in English. If there's going to be a tyranny of text, okay, we'll accommodate you. We'll put it all in text. All right? That's what she did. The student is now able to read it. The student with the screen reader is now able to read it because it's in text. It's no longer images. All right? Now, what she did got me a little bit mad. Well, she told the student to ignore the garbage. Well, I happen to believe, and I think he does, we should just clean up the garbage. Students can do that, right? That's what kids are for. They have energy. They have eyes. Later, she pre-populates an Excel file. Okay, and the task for the student is to make a reflective graph based on the coordinates. Now, the student can output this. He can't see the graph. You can. But that's the blind student talking to you, making a graph so you can judge the graph. Okay? So a lot of accessibility is, going from one environment to another. If you bear in mind that there's an environment to produce and an environment to consume, that alone helps you tremendously. And we are so running out of time. I've got so much more to say, but I would like to let Colleen and Ethan talk to their experiences with trying to make files accessible. Colleen?
I'll go.
Oh, okay. Let me just give a very brief introduction here. So there's a lot of text, ready-made text ways of putting math into a text-readable form. However, LaTeX is one that is professionally recognized they use it as a profession, so we should try and do what we can to make sure that our students actually have job-ready skills. Ethan?
All right, so I haven't seen the final version of this.
That's just a picture, not a...
Okay, so I'm Dr. Denal. I'm in the physics department. That's okay. And so realistically, to make math accessible, one way that we can always make math accessible is to put it into text that screen readers can read. And so LaTeX is I would say, going on almost 40 years now of professional typesetting software, which takes plain text files and transforms them into, as its creator Donald Knuth said, beautiful documents. So if we take a look at, for example, this larger keypad than I'm used to, this area here, the area of a triangle with base b and height h is 1/2 bh. The area of a circle with radius r is pi r squared. And what we see, this is incredibly readable. To a screen reader will read this correctly and not have any problems with it. When we get to a little bit more complicated mathematics, we've seen screen reader completely fail at professionally, quote unquote, publish something through Blackboard or read it correctly depending on what operating system. With using LaTeX, it's literally just Notepad. That is the minimum software that you have is some kind of type software. And screen readers can always read plain text documents. And so something that's written like this, x equals negative b plus minus square root, etc. The screen reader can read this and produce something understandable to a student, as long as that student has some experience in understanding the ordering of how you would write in text a particular document. So LaTeX, however, has a couple of things that are not working well for it, and that is people who like to put lots and lots of things in their documents. If I plug this into a screen reader, the screen reader will read document class article, use package listings, use package test phys, use package MS Smith, use package birth kit, use package graphics, and just continue on and 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 on. And actually, this is one of my documents. And on and on and on and on. This has a lot of stuff in here that I use from a lot of my advanced math and computational courses. If I were a blind student, I would probably just give up about a minute into reading this. But when I finally got down to the actual document itself, which is really somewhere up here, I name the course and I get down to the content. The content is what matters. And so writing in LaTeX can be a giant mess of commands. However, LaTeX is fundamentally a macro-based language. And being a macro-based language means I don't have to put all of those things at the beginning of every file. I could take all of those things, compress them, throw them into another file, and just use that style as use package, my style, and just leave it as that. The student who is having a screen reader read that would just see use package, my style. My style contains absolutely nothing of information to that student at all. It's all visual. And to a blind student or to a student with low vision, whether something is blue or purple, they don't care. To a sighted student, whether it's blue or purple, that's important. And so we can really eliminate most of this simply by placing it in another file, compiling it with that style file, that template, if you will. And then we get right here. Here's the cool part. And I love this because this is one thing that LaTeX does amazingly well. This command, begin enumerate. Now, how do you do an enumerated list in Word? Well, one thing you don't, because it's always terrible. But a screen reader would read an enumerated list, it'd finish the paragraph, and just go 1, blah, 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 2, blah, 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 3, blah, blah, and whatever. In LaTeX, you don't get the 1, 2, and 3, but you do get this read to you. Begin enumerate. Item. Make sure that Solar System is mounted on the Mac. Remember, and it's going to fudge out with the true type text here, Finder, go, connect to server, /item, reload, etc., etc. So you get that item, item, item audibly, and you can tell that that's a list. Then it ends the enumerated list and goes on with the rest of the content. Section, we're starting a new section here. Not just words, but section, this. Simple oscillatory motion, whatever. Begin align, that's an equation environment, and so on and so forth. The rest of this here, for example, omega 0 square root k over m, that's the natural frequency of an oscillator. And that's inline mathematics, read correctly by the screen reader. And to the extent of a blind person listening to this, they would get more out of it, understanding at least the syntax of LaTeX, than they would if they were read some PDF document that was created. On the other hand, going back to that same blind student, they can also produce, I'm way over time, sorry. They can also produce this directly simply by typing on a keyboard. If I want to put an inline equation, all I have to do is type $, and then use /codes for fraction, /codes for square root, and so on and so forth. To a student who communicates with their professors solely through a keyboard, they can type this in and then click the cute little compile button, and boom, they get a document that even basic can be read by anyone who's sighted in a format that a sighted person would be used to seeing. And that's an incredible power of LaTeX itself. But it takes work in two ways. The first is you got to learn LaTeX if you want to communicate with a student using LaTeX. The other thing is that the student has to learn LaTeX if they want to communicate with anyone else using LaTeX. But that's, as Sharon mentioned before, that's a technology issue. That's something that, unfortunately, students with disabilities have to learn, as they always do, to communicate with those who do not. In terms of writing LaTeX files, we have to get out of bad LaTeX habits. One way to get out of bad LaTeX habits is to throw things into a style file and not overpopulate our preamble with 100 different things. I'm really guilty of this, as you can see, but I've never had to worry about someone actually reading my LaTeX. They just read the document as printed. On the flip side, there are accessibility working groups in the LaTeX community currently right now. They are somewhat scattershot. LaTeX is a free software, and anyone who's ever used Linux or other free software before knows that if you're not paid for it, you'll get it eventually. And so accessibility is in the process of being worked on in 3 or 4 different directions. My professional society, the American Astronomical Society, has a LaTeX working group to allow AAS Tech, which is the LaTeX language used for astronomy, to make that accessible, to create accessible PDFs out of the box, rather than to go through some rigmarole of having to use Acrobat. There is a package, lovingly named Accessibility, which will automatically create that reading, that text box reading that more often than not passes, unless you have a really complex document, the Acrobat checks. There is another package called Accessibility, but with an X. And that accessibility package is designed specifically so that if you put an equation into a PDF, when a screen reader hits the equation, it will read the LaTeX code behind the equation out loud. So a student who knows LaTeX will listen to the LaTeX code, understand the LaTeX code, and then they won't have to worry about having their their reader read the wrong thing. But that's also Acrobat-based. It's not web-based. There's some compensations that have to be made no matter what you do. But at least from a plain text point of view, LaTeX is a fantastic tool because any screen reader can read text. And it's up to the content producer to produce a document which is readable by that screen reader. I.e., don't put too much crap in it.
Also, as I understand it, many professional societies expect the student to.
Yes.
Okay.
The physics.
It's not only about accessibility, it's about professional advancement to know LaTeX. All right, and the blind can play on an equal level playing field with the sighted if they know LaTeX. To advanced studies, true university level studies.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget to mention that you're the head of UT LaTeX.
Oh, I am the head of the UT LaTeX Accessibility Group. I forgot to mention that. The one last thing I wanted to mention, and I apologize for taking up so much time.
Please.
Sharon showed this video of a math teacher working with geometry for students without the ability to see. And that fundamentally is one of the most difficult things, besides astronomy, which is very difficult to be blind and also be an astronomer. It's very difficult to be blind and be a geometer as well. A lot of what we take for granted in terms of our visual acuity vanishes, and we lose a lot of understanding of how things look. We have an idea of how they feel. But one thing that blind students do get is they get a somewhat intuitive understanding sort of positions in space. They get good spatial positioning reckoning because they can't see, but they develop that through touch, they develop that through sense. And LaTeX has a built-in drawing system. It's known as TIXI. TIXI is a coordinate-based drawing system. So like the coordinates in that video, you can type in draw from this coordinate aligned to this coordinate, from that coordinate point aligned to another coordinate. Oh, bang the microphone. And let's create a triangle or a complex diagram simply by knowing different coordinate points in the draw command. And that in and of itself allows someone who is not sighted to not only hear visually, this is connected to this, is connected to this, or this is connected to this at an angle of this. And the same way, produce that graphic representation for someone who can see. And so that's enough for me.
You
I
talk
think
as
for 2
long as
minutes,
you
'cause I know
need.
Rita has to go.
No, you
So,
talk.
I will, no, I'm here to tell you everything not to try. Okay, that's my job. So I said, what am I going to tell them to do? Because I've got lists of things that I've done that don't work. So I'll tell you what not to waste your time on. So I teach math, and I actually teach. Oh yes, I'm usually loud enough though. So I teach 2 different courses: college algebra, finite math. Neither one are for math majors. So I teach all the students who don't want to take math. So and I'm having issues with both those courses and making them accessible. So I'm just going to talk about the college algebra because I don't want to bore you with both problems. But I have for that course, I actually have videos of me teaching every lesson that I teach in college algebra, and they were all made accessible for the deaf because they are all closed caption. So that I got covered. Well, that doesn't help our blind students. So I've tried everything I could think of. I have, for all my students, I have PDF files, like note-taking guides I make for my students. They print them out. I post them on Blackboard. They print them out. They bring them to class. And then we don't waste time with them drawing out a lot of, I have the graph there, or I have the practice problem already there, and we can work it out together. So how am I supposed to get that to the blind students? So we were trying to find a way to make either my Word documents or my PDF files accessible. It has been a nightmare. I don't know LaTeX. I'm sure my student, she has an example of my video. We don't even have to. My students aren't going to know LaTeX. My students are not math majors, so why would they? I've got the fine arts majors, I've got business majors, I've got dance minors. I don't have students who are going to benefit from that learning that professional language. So they're not going to learn that. I don't know that. I know math type because that's what I've used for years to type. And Sharon found Math Player that would read math type, but it only reads the equations and it doesn't read the text. It can't read the graphs. How do I try to go in, type the description of the graph. How do I type the description of the graph without telling them the equation? And maybe the question is, here's a graph, find the equation. How else am I going to tell them? What am I going to say? This is the maximum, this is the minimum. Well, sometimes that's what I want them to find. So I'm giving them the answer. So none of that's working. I thought I had this brilliant idea of I thought rather than typing all that stuff takes hours. It already took me hours to do this before. So I'm like, you know what? I'll take the time. I'll just read the darn thing. I will read it out word for word. The kids will have the right jargon, because I don't do that in the video. I don't read them the document. We just do the math. So I thought, okay, and I was so excited. I found a way to embed audio in my PDF file, and I'm like, Sharon, I got it. I'll just take time. I will read out 30-some documents if I have to. Done. Well, okay, I tried that.
Her audio is embedded in that PDF.
But you didn't get it to work, did you? Well, when I tried emailing it, it didn't attach the audio.
The problem is, it's there,
But then she said, how's a student going to find it to click? I was like, oh my God, you're kidding. You have to click. And how am I supposed to tell them? But I don't know how you tell them to do
Mat
it.
160,
Okay.
Section F Foundations adapted from...
Sorry. But it gets to me actually just talking. But she said that won't work because they have to know where to click to see where I was reading it. So that doesn't work. So then I thought, I looked swell paper. Good, they'll print it out. They need to feel the graph. They really do need to feel the graphs. All right. Well, that not only is it expensive, which I didn't care because I figured the university would pay for that. Then I found out I have to type in Braille. I don't know how to type so it'll read Braille. So that doesn't work. We said, fine. You know, we're just going to pay. I'll pay it out of my own pocket. I'm not wasting any more time on this. We got the department to pay. Lori Kittendorf's going to reimburse the department. We'll just have students do this, right? Well, that doesn't work because I got to train the students. I got to interview the students. I got to hire the students. I got to train the students. I got to give them math type. I got to teach them how to do math type. I got to supervise the students. Again, where's all our time to do that? So that's out. Went to the publisher's website. Fine, I'll just give them the publisher documents. They don't have to have Colleen's documents, although I think mine are better. I'll just get the publisher's documents. It goes, and I did get my documents to go green, by the way. I was really excited about that. My documents all go green on Ally, but they really still don't help the student, which really is what I want. So the publisher's ones, okay, I'll use theirs. Theirs don't work either. You pull the screen, it'll green in Ally, mind you, the PDF files, the textbooks, some of it, the PowerPoints, but the screen readers don't read theirs either, so that's out. And I really am at my wit's end on what we're supposed to do because I feel like I've tried everything and it's just really frustrating. And I'm at the point where I feel like my students, 99.9% of them are going to suffer because I'm going to say forget it and I'm not going to post to my stuff. Because what else can I do? Just print copies, hand them out in class, and be done with it. Because I'm wasting time on something that's not even benefiting any student. My videos benefit all my students because the ones who are absent watch them. Those are great. But all this other stuff is not benefiting anyone, and it's wasting all the time that I could be making my classes better for my kids. So that's my venting. Did you have a suggestion?
Yeah, so there's a lot of there's a school for the blind and deaf in Virginia, and sometimes if you contact them and you tell them that you're having an issue, you can't bombard them with a lot, but they'll type things for Braille. I had a friend in college who was blind, and they actually helped her and translated all of her stuff into Braille for her.
Wow, that's good. I even called USF to ask them what they did. They don't do it unless they have a student. I'm on the school board in Pasco County. We have 76,000 students. I said, what are we doing? We don't do that unless we have a blind student, and then we'll have somebody sit with them and make the shape, and they can feel it. And so people aren't doing what they want us to do. But that's a good suggestion. Yeah. So that's my vent.
Don't forget to mention that she is head of the UT Math Accessibility Working Group.
I'm not solving any problems.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. Colleen is solving problems because she is giving me stuff to document. All right.
Now we can document.
All right. I'm serious. Right. And that matters by law. That matters by the lawsuit. Because I have to, if I can document that our efforts that to make her class stuff accessible takes an unreasonable amount of effort, and that woman has tried and tried and tried. All right. That helps us on many levels, okay? But we have to document these efforts, and I've got her stuff documented. What we're doing, it's called an equally effective alternative access plan. And sorry, this page is a little rough. But the bottom line is, and it's only like gelled in my head, like only this week, how we could approach it. So going to UT's requirements for a course or for a program of study, all right, I look at these and I say, all right, this task is real analysis. Not that I know what that means, all right, but I can look at technologies that are associated with producing accessible real analysis and start documenting what it takes to do that. And then from there it goes to reasonable, unreasonable, reasonable, unreasonable. All right? So when Colleen has a student in her class that needs extra help, she's going to have, we don't have this yet, but we're developing a thing where she can go in her syllabus and say, if you need special accommodations, we're going to give you alternate content according to this plan. All right? It won't be the same stuff, but it'll still be able to give you ideas of how to learn the concept. And that's what this plan is about, because it grieves me that we've got such great teachers here that are basically throwing away their content that is so valuable. As a teacher, I'm not going to let that happen to the best of my ability. Questions? Makes sense. What do we say makes sense about this plan? Okay, and it's very much in the embryonic stage, but that's the approach I take when a teacher has problems such as Colleen had. I document it, and then from there it's legal ammunition to say we need something else, we need funding, we need extra help, she needs to be able to buy Braille books, that sort of thing, okay? And let her just teach. That's it. Thank you for attending.